I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
27 years after Princess Diana's tragic death, Buckingham Palace has unveiled a secret that could shake the monarchy to its very core. During quiet renovations at Kensington Palace, workers stumbled upon a sealed room, untouched since Diana's final days. Inside lay an ornate jewelry box, engraved with a haunting message meant only for those who dare seek the truth. DS. When Princess Anne was tasked with cataloging the contents, what began as a simple royal duty quickly spiraled into a chilling revelation of betrayal, cover-ups, and danger. Hidden letters, secret accounts, and Diana's own confessions pointed toward a powerful conspiracy she had been ready to expose. But someone had made sure she never got the chance. As Anne delved deeper, one question echoed louder than all the rest: who really silenced the people's princess? Subscribe, like, and share as we follow Princess Anne's journey from loyal royal to justice-seeking rebel. The truth Diana died protecting may finally come to light. The unexpected inheritance in the spring of 2024. Renovation crews descended upon the quieter wings of Kensington Palace. What was meant to be a routine restoration of one of the oldest sections of the royal estate soon turned into something else entirely. Beneath layers of dust, behind a sealed wooden panel, workers uncovered a forgotten chamber, small, silent, and frozen in time since the late Princess Diana's final days. It was more than just a room. It was a vault of memories, untouched, unspoken, and hauntingly preserved. When word reached Buckingham Palace, Princess Anne was summoned. As the most senior working royal, known for her discretion and unwavering duty, she was the natural choice to oversee the cataloging of the room's contents. Though Anne had long distanced herself from royal drama, she couldn't deny the gravity of what had been found. Stepping into the room, she was struck by the stillness. Dust clung to elegant gowns, boxes of handwritten notes, and framed photographs of a woman whose life had been both adored and relentlessly dissected. Anne's feelings toward her late sister-in-law were complicated. In the early years, she had dismissed Diana as too emotional, too fragile, too hungry for attention. But over time, away from the public eye, Anne had come to see another side: Diana's fierce devotion to her sons and her genuine compassion for those in pain. There had been rare, quiet moments when Anne had respected her deeply. Thousands of items filled the room, but one caught Anne's attention immediately. Nestled at the back of a shelf, half hidden beneath a silk scarf, sat an ornate jewelry box. It was unlike anything else. Crafted from dark rosewood, inlaid with delicate pearls and sapphires, it shimmered faintly even beneath its layer of dust. The craftsmanship was exquisite, but its aura felt different, personal, almost sacred. Anne picked it up carefully. It was heavier than it looked, as if it carried more than jewels. Turning it over in her gloved hands, she noticed an inscription carved subtly into the base of the lid. For those who dare seek truth. DS. A chill ran down Anne's spine. Diana Spencer, not Princess of Wales. Not a title, just her name. Raw, defiant. Anne looked around the room again, suddenly seeing everything in a new light. Had Diana left behind something more than trinkets and dresses? What truth was she referring to? And why hide such a cryptic message in something so beautiful? Clutching the box, and understood this was no ordinary inheritance. It was a message, perhaps even a warning, meant for someone brave enough to look beyond appearances. Someone who might, far too late, realize they should have asked more questions when there was still time. The hidden compartment that evening, Princess Anne sat alone in her private quarters. The jewelry box rested on a velvet cloth before her. Its polished surface gleamed under the soft lamplight, but her eyes remained fixed on the words engraved beneath the lid. For those who dare seek truth, those words refused to leave her mind. Anne was not one for sentiment. Yet something about that inscription pulled at her, not just her duty, but something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. With steady hands, she opened the box. Inside, the contents glittered: earrings of rare Burmese rubies, a sapphire bracelet that shimmered like starlight, and a pendant of emerald and diamond so perfectly cut it seemed to glow from within. But as Anne examined each piece, she noticed something odd. Etched into the back of each item were tiny markings, symbols, numbers, and initials she didn't recognize. None appeared in any royal inventory she'd ever seen. Curious, She retrieved a magnifying glass and studied them more closely. Some looked like coordinates. Others resembled reference codes or bank numbers. One even matched what seemed to be an international account code. These weren't keepsakes. They were clues. Anne turned her attention to the box itself. Her fingers traced the delicate carvings, searching for anything unusual. Then, by chance or fate, her thumb pressed against a raised groove near the base. A soft click echoed through the room. The bottom panel shifted slightly. Anne froze. Slowly, she slid the panel open, revealing a hidden compartment packed tightly with old handwritten letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. They smelled faintly of lavender. Beneath them lay a stack of glossy photographs. Diana, unmistakably her, but in disguise, meeting with strangers in unfamiliar locations, cafes, underground car parks, private homes. None of it matched the public image the world knew. Tucked beneath the photos was a small silver key. Attached was a tag, Zurich Deposit Box 837L. Anne's pulse quickened. Beneath the letters, one envelope bore her own name, written in Diana's distinctive, looping script, "To Anne, please read if I am gone." The date in the corner made her blood run cold, 3 days before Diana's death in Paris. Anne's hands trembled slightly as she opened the letter. The ink had smudged, as if written in haste. The first line stopped her breath. "If you're reading this, then they've succeeded in silencing me." The room seemed to spin. This wasn't sentiment. This wasn't grief. It was a warning from beyond the grave. Anne closed her eyes and drew a long breath. Whatever truth Diana had uncovered was now in her hands, and someone powerful and dangerous had gone to great lengths to keep it buried. CCTV footage from Paris had gone missing. Reports of the white Fiat seen at the crash site were dismissed without reason. "It was never meant to be solved," the investigator said softly, "just quietly closed." The weight of those words pressed heavily on Anne's shoulders. Diana had died chasing the truth, and now, by stepping into her shadow, Anne had become the next target. That evening, when she returned home, she found a single envelope slid under her door. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The message inside was brief: "Stop digging," or "Join her." Anne stared at the words, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. The threat was clear, but what they failed to understand was that fear had never ruled her life. And now that she knew what Diana had died trying to reveal, retreat was no longer an option. The ghost of her sister-in-law was no longer whispering from the shadows. She was roaring from the grave, and Anne would not let her be silenced again. The network exposed days bled into nights as Princess Anne slipped into shadowed rooms, sifting through Diana's papers like a scholar poring over sacred texts. Swiss ledgers, handwritten letters, and hushed testimonies stitched together a picture too grim to ignore. Diana hadn't stumbled into danger. She had uncovered an international operation wrapped in royal privilege behind charities and humanitarian fronts. She had found arms deals, money laundering, and a network that operated in plain sight and built timelines, matched names, and traced funds across borders until horrifying patterns began to sharpen. Diana's landmine campaigns and war zone visits had unknowingly placed her on the front line of something sinister. Betrayal cut deepest. Friends who had smiled at banquets appeared in the ledgers authorizing illicit transfers, and one name kept surfacing publicly impeccable, privately implicated, and related by blood.n called Timothy Radcliffe, a hesitant Red Cross contact who had once worked with Diana from him. She learned of a buried exposé one that had been suppressed after the journalist investigating it died mysteriously. Just weeks after Diana, another file, sealed with government markings, carried a chilling title: Operation Marionette. Inside were orders: ensure containment before Paris trip, wrist elevated. Then came the final blow: a grainy surveillance still. A second car traced to a company owned by a royal staffer, proof the crash had been staged, and the hunters were still watching. The breakdown. The study was silent, except for the soft crackling of the fireplace. Princess Anne sat alone, surrounded by mountains of evidence, fragments of a life once overlooked. Pinned beside a cluster of documents was a photograph of Diana, smiling, radiant, unaware she had been marked. Anne's gaze lingered on it. But this time, not as a royal, not as a skeptic. This time, she saw a woman who had screamed without being heard. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Anne was not known for emotion. Her life had been defined by duty, distance, and control. But tonight, she crumbled. She pressed her face into her hands and wept, quiet, steady sobs, for the woman she had misjudged. For the young mother who had stepped into the lion's den armed only with her heart and conviction. "I should have seen it," Anne whispered. "I should have asked her." Guilt settled like a weight upon her chest. Diana had tried to raise the alarm, to speak the truth, but the institution, the media, the palace, and even Anne herself had turned away. She had been branded difficult, unstable, attention-seeking, but she had never sought attention. She had sought protection for her children. Anne reread one of Diana's final letters. "They will never stop until they own everything. Even William and Harry. They're not safe from the rot that grows behind these walls. I don't fear for myself anymore. I fear for what they'll become if no one tells them the truth." Anne clutched the paper to her chest. Tears returned, hot, silent, and cleansing. For all the crowns and ceremonies, for all the titles and protocols, this was what had been missed. A mother standing alone in the storm, shielding her sons with her own body. Diana had never been a threat. She had been a shield. The race against time. Anne's phone buzzed, shattering the silence. "A secure line," she answered immediately. "Ma'am?" Timothy Radcliffe's voice crackled, urgent and strained. "There's been movement where—" Anne demanded Lambrook Prince George's School. "There was an attempt to infiltrate the grounds. Security stopped it, but it's not a coincidence. We believe the network is targeting the boys now, starting with William's children. You need to get to him now." The line went dead. Anne froze, her heart hammering. The danger had never ended. It had only changed form. Now, it was no longer about the past. The same shadows that silenced Diana were reaching for her sons. This time, Anne would not stand back. This time, she would fight. She moved instantly. There was no time for protocol. Too many security channels had already been compromised. She contacted only those she trusted. Absolutely, including a retired MI5 director who had once owed Diana a quiet favor. Within an hour, covert teams were deployed to land. Where Prince George was attending classes, another shadow team was sent to monitor. Prince Harry's location in the U.S., Anne knew they were running on borrowed time. Under cover of darkness, she left Kensington with flash drives, documents, and encrypted footage, everything Diana had died to collect. Her mission was clear. Expose the network before it struck again, but she knew they wouldn't fall quietly. That confrontation in a private chamber at Clarence House. Anne stood before two senior royals, both named in Diana's hidden reports. Their faces were calm masks of aristocratic control. "You knew what she was uncovering," Anne said coldly, "and you let it happen." One of them shifted uneasily. These were complexities beyond one woman's understanding. "No," Anne snapped. "They were crimes." She placed a folder on the table. "If anything happens to William, Harry, or their children, this goes public, every page, every name, every transaction." Silence filled the room. Finally, one of the men spoke, voice low. "You're making enemies you can't even see." Anne's eyes hardened. "I already have," she said, "and I'm still standing." The attack minutes later, MI5 intercepted an unregistered delivery van near Prince William's estate. Inside, blueprints, surveillance photos, and tampered brakes for a staff vehicle. It wasn't a robbery. It was a warning. Hours later, as Anne watched the live feed from her blood ran cold. A black SUV carrying Catherine and Charlotte had been forced off a narrow country road. The driver survived. No serious injuries. But the message was clear. Next time, there would be no survivors. Anne's face hardened. This was war, and she had already chosen her side. Diana's final victory the next morning. Princess Anne stood at a podium in a secure briefing room. The world's press watched in stunned silence. Behind her stood MI5 officers guarding sealed folders and digital archives, all of it drawn from Diana's secret collection. Anne's voice was steady, resolute. "For years, we told the world a story that was incomplete," she began. "What we failed to tell you, what was kept from all of us, was that Diana, Princess of Wales, died not simply as a symbol of compassion, but as a woman on a mission for justice." The revelation sent shockwaves across the globe within days. Headlines screamed names once considered untouchable. High-ranking officials, corporate executives, and even minor royals were arrested or forced to resign. Offshore accounts were frozen. Sealed files were reopened. The web Diana had uncovered and Anne had revealed began to collapse. Diana was vindicated. She had not died in vain. She had died protecting truth and protecting her sons, the foundation weeks later. Anne quietly founded the Diana Truth Foundation, an organization devoted to transparency, whistleblower protection, and investigative journalism. Its mission was simple: carry the torch Diana had lit in secret. Her legacy was no longer tragedy. It was triumph. That evening, Anne returned to the jewelry box. It had been catalogued, preserved, but never emptied. Her fingers brushed a hidden groove. A faint click. A hidden panel lifted. Inside lay a slim cassette labeled for William and Harry, "Only if the world finally hears me." Anne's breath caught. She slid the tape into an old player. Diana's voice filled the room, soft but steady. "My dear boys, if this message finds you, then I know you've heard the truth. Not just about what happened to me, but about who you truly are. Not symbols, not heirs, but hearts that can change the world. Don't carry fear, carry courage. That's what I tried to do. That's what I hope you'll keep doing." Anne's tears returned, not of sorrow, but of peace. Diana's final gift was not just truth. It was love, timeless, unbroken, and victorious. Timeless, unbroken, and victorious. As the world began to process the storm unleashed by Princess Anne's revelation, a quiet unease settled over the royal institution. Buckingham Palace, once the symbol of unshakable stability, now stood as the epicenter of a reckoning long overdue. Reporters camped outside the gates, analysts dissected every word, and the whispers, once confined to hidden corridors, now echoed through every household across Britain. Behind those ancient walls there was silence, but not peace. The monarchy had survived wars, scandals, and abdications, but never before had its own secrets been laid bare by one of its own. In the early hours following the press conference, Anne sat alone by her window, overlooking the mist-covered gardens of Sandringham. The air was heavy with rain, the kind that carries both cleansing and sorrow. She knew what she had done could never be undone. There would be consequences, political, personal, and perhaps even deadly. But for the first time in decades, she felt a strange, calm certainty. Somewhere, she thought, Diana was finally at rest. The next morning's papers told the story in headlines that would define an era. Princess Anne exposes global network. Diana's truth confirmed. Buckingham Palace under siege. The People's Princess vindicated after 28 years. Across London, crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace, leaving flowers, letters, and candles, not in mourning this time, but in solidarity. Diana's image, radiant and alive, filled every screen. Murals appeared overnight, with words painted beneath. She spoke. The world finally listened. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, MI5 worked tirelessly to dismantle the remaining threads of the network that had haunted Diana's final years. Arrests continued quietly. Names disappeared from company boards, and hidden accounts were drained and frozen. But Anne knew better than to believe the battle was over. Power, once exposed, doesn't die. Adapts. Weeks later, she received a message through an encrypted line. It was short and unsigned. "There are still files you haven't seen." Attached was a single document, a photograph dated months before Diana's death. In it, Diana stood beside two men in military attire, both faces blurred, both wearing insignias, not of Britain, but of a foreign power. Scribbled beneath in Diana's handwriting, "They're watching us from within." Anne stared at it for a long time. The story was not over. The forces Diana had fought were older, wider, and more deeply rooted than she had imagined. And though justice had begun, the truth was still incomplete. That night, she opened her diary and wrote a single line. "Her war has become mine." The world had seen the public reckoning, the triumph of truth, and the collapse of corruption. But deep inside the palace, beyond the cameras, the headlines, and the cheers, a new battle was quietly beginning. One not for power, but for the soul of the monarchy itself. And somewhere in the shadows, those who once silenced Diana were already preparing their next move. Because in the realm of crowns and secrets, the truth is never fully told. It only waits patiently for the next person brave enough to speak it. This was not the end. It was the beginning of the next chapter. Stay tuned, because what comes next changes everything.